So we are back for our second episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast, and we are reviewing episode 2 of The Last of Us, which is the new HBO hit series that comes on Sunday night. And episode 2 was titled Infected.
I just want to say, technically, this is going to be our first episode because we can't use our last episode because of the audio.
That was such a trial and error episode where I spent several hours, and that is not an exaggeration.
No, I know. I
started
saw you
editing at like 10, and then I looked down, and it's like 4:45.
Whoa, I didn't know it was
I mean,
that
I took
long.
pauses in between, but there's a lot of things that I definitely could have done better.
Sad because I feel like we had some really great takes.
Some great takes, I know.
And I feel like if we were trying to say them again now, it would just not feel genuine anymore.
We can't do it.
It's gone.
We can't do it that way. But I will say, I was able to get some clips that I think could work. So we just finished episode 2, another banger, in my opinion. So as always, I love to hear from you first because my mind is still more thinking about how did this go in comparison to the games. But for you, this is, again, like your first time viewing it. You did play the first few minutes of the game itself, but I think right now in episode 2, we've surpassed what you've played.
I have no idea what's
So none of that, you don't remember anything.
I don't know. From this point until the season finale, I won't know anything. In the season finale, I'll probably know everything. But all of the episodes, there's 10, right? Because it's HBO.
I think we only get 8, actually. Yeah. So they were going to originally do 9. And in the first episode, that was going to end with Joel dropping the dead young boy into that pile. And it's supposed to be like a bit of a revelation that this is not the same Joel that we had come to know and love in the first few minutes of that episode. And then you see like the camera pan to Ellie. She's locked up in a room. This is all in the podcast, HBO official podcast for The Last of Us, and the 2 directors talk about how they wanted that to be the end, where there's a bit of a mystery and like, oh, who's this girl that they're panning the camera on? So for me, I'd be like, oh, snaps, it's Ellie, it's lit. But like for people who have no idea about the games, like, who is the little girl? I don't care about that. So a lot of HBO execs were like, maybe we should put these 2 together. And that's sort of how we landed on 8 episodes instead of 9.
I really don't like that.
It's gonna fly by. That's how it always goes, isn't it? It happened with House of the Dragon. It happened with Andor. It's gonna happen with
we had
this
more
one.
episodes with
That's
those.
True. We had 10.
This is really sad news for me.
Well, no. How much did we have with Andor?
12.
We had 12 episodes with Andor. 12. Oh my God. And we only have 8 with this one. So it's going by quickly, but immediate thoughts. What are we thinking?
Okay. Well, from the beginning, I was like, woman in STEM, period. They have that girl
with the Indonesian woman?
Yes. Also, though, I did have a second thought that was like, it kind of sucks for them to make Ground Zero for this pandemic be a country in Asia.
I thought the same
I just feel like we didn't have to do that.
I was like, damn, yo. Are we tiptoeing into the xenophobia a little bit? I'm not sure.
I just feel like we didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But, so I'm assuming that also was not in the game, which, right?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. So I'm liking with this thing that they're doing. I hope that they do this like at least for a while, where like at the beginning we get like a flashback to give us some background of like how this thing started. That's not in the game. That's like has nothing to do with the characters that we know. It just, is like there and happening.
Yeah.
It was very unsettling again. Again, that first portion was probably the most unsettling part of the episode.
It just sets the stage.
Yeah, it does. I did not when she started checking out the body and the thing that it was moving, the cordyceps, fungi. Not a fan. Did not enjoy.
It felt alive because it was moving.
Yes.
I'm not a fan of that. Very unsettling.
I don't like. And then when she was like, bomb the city.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to do that. They're not going to bomb the city.
Well, in the games, that's sort of what's implied. with
like
all the
eventually,
building.
but like it's
Yeah.
too late. Like it's gonna clearly it spreads first, and then they're like, well, we might as well now.
Mm-hmm.
But she sounded like she was saying like bomb it now so it doesn't spread.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not gonna do that because life still feels normal for most people in the city. It would feel very inhumane to bomb Jakarta off of off of the map.
Yeah.
But again, it was like the same impact of the line from the first episode where he was like, we lose. It was like the same thing when she said that. And then she was like, can you please drive me home so I can go be with my family? Because she's like, she knows. She's like, this is the end of life as we know it. How long does it take, though? It was January of 2003. When were we in 2003 in the beginning of the first episode? Is it like a few months, a few weeks?
I don't know, but I get the idea that this scene in the second episode is earlier.
Well,
than the flashback.
yeah, it has to be earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering how much earlier.
I'm not sure. But I mean, this thing can spread pretty quickly.
I mean, they said there was 14 people already missing.
Right. And that was pretty like somber for me because again, just a couple of words she says and you like the dread kicks in and it carries it throughout that entire episode. And I'm thinking back to when she's examining the body and before she enters in, she's looking at the soldier like cordyceps can't grow on human beings. And she kind of said it like, come on, bro. I've been doing this. I'm telling you, it's not possible. And then she walks in and you immediately see something change in her. She's like, wait a minute. Something's not right here. Oh. And then she, cuts the human open. That thing growing out of the mouths is not in the game at all. And so when I saw that threw me off. Because in the first episode, we see the grandmother, she has that in her mouth.
Oh, I don't remember
But
that.
I couldn't tell if that was like pieces of the human she bit off.
I think that's
and
what I
it was
thought it
lingering in her
was.
mouth. But now I'm thinking it's the fungi sprouting out.
Somehow that's going to be important. I don't really know how.
I think so. They're doing a lot more world building in terms of providing substance and information on where is all of this coming from. Versus in a video game, the world building, there's some of it, but most of the world building is you learning what the game mechanics are like. So like the crouching, the, moving in silence, pressing R2 to like hear the, the black and white scenes. So you can sort of hear the echoes of people, what guns you can craft with, and et cetera. So this, I think, is very good for like the people who play the game because now there's something to look forward to. That hive mind, that's not in the game either. And I don't like that because it's scary as hell.
Yeah, I just feel like they're breaking a lot of zombie rules, okay? Which I guess you have to do to make it new and interesting. But like, first of all, the zombies are fast. It's just already a huge issue for me. I really don't like that.
It makes it more terrifying?
Yes, because you can usually depend on being able to outrun a horde of zombies. They're not, if you run fast enough, they're not going to catch you, right? Usually the only thing you have to worry about is if there's too many of them.
Yeah.
But now just one of them could catch up to you. That's not fun at all. They move like humans, but just like, they're like more sporadic, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, it's like when they were fighting in the museum, that zombie was taking legitimate swings.
Well,
I don't like that.
I don't know if we can call them zombies.
The infected.
Yeah. Because they're not dead. From what I understand in the rules that they sort of established in The Last of Us is those humans are still alive. Like this is going to be very unsettling, but there are moments where like before a clicker or an infected hears the sound of a person, you can sort of hear them like crouched up in a corner, like moaning, you hear crying sounds. The human's still in there. And to some degree, they understand that they don't have control over their bodies, which is why you hear the agonizing and the crying and the moaning sounds. It's as things move further along that they continue to lose a bit more of their humanity. But even that clicker, they're still a human being. They're not dead. The fungi has taken too much control over their body. So like one example could be like the grandmother had Parkinson's in the first episode. Like she couldn't move. The fungi kind of cures her. She's able to move her body again. It just moves it to the full extreme where she doesn't have any control over what the fungi is doing with her body. But the Parkinson is pretty much eradicated. Yeah. That changes everything. So I don't know if we can look at it from in terms of a zombie rules. These aren't zombies.
How conscious are they? How?
That I don't know. Because that clicker walked up to Tess.
And kissed her on the mouth.
Which... What?
The only thing I could think, I'm like, clearly this has to matter. And it can't just be about spreading it because she already has it. So the only thing I could think is like some sort of human need for affection. I don't know.
That would be very weird.
I don't know.
That's given like, what's the Zack Snyder movie that he came out? Dawn of the Dead? That was on Netflix.
I didn't watch it.
We did watch it together. When he went to, they had to like do the heist thing in the casino in Las Vegas. Oh.
It has to do with zombies?
Yes. We watched it together. Come on.
Was it good?
I mean, it's Zack Snyder. It's hit or miss. I love Zack Snyder, but
heist with zombies.
They had to steal the funds, and it had I think it had the guy who played Ghost in Power, and then it had Batista in it.
Show. How? I'm trying to understand, why would they be trying to pull off a heist and there's zombies?
There's something in there, but I guess it doesn't really matter. But I brought that up to show that in that movie, they had some intelligence. They were not fully gone, which it kind of seems like that's
what they're doing
what's
here
happening
too.
Here. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, that was very unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
I did not. I'm just interested to see where they take that and what impact it will have on the plot, because that's also not in the game, I'm assuming.
No.
If that is what they're doing, that these are like a bit more sentient than we think,
Yeah.
then it has to have some plot impact.
I think so. It sounded as though Craig Mazin was saying there's going to be a payoff to a lot of these questions later on, because I've started to see a few people try to pinpoint on where's the origin of all of this. I know we talked a little bit about this on our unofficially episode 1. We're like, where did this originate? So that doesn't really get answered in the video game, but when you're still playing as Sarah at the beginning of the game, you can sort of move around and sort of it can feel almost open world, where you can like move to certain things and press triangle to pick up a book and see what the cover is and all that sort of stuff. And so there is a newspaper where it talks about like crops like being rotten essentially or something like that. I would not be surprised if that was a hint as to where things went south, because people are thinking fungus, what if it's in the food? What if it's like in something like yeast? At first, I didn't pay that theory too much attention, but then when I rewatched episode 1, I did start to notice a couple of things. They paid a lot of attention to food, especially in those first 15 to 20 minutes. So the first thing,
Making the pancakes.
but they didn't have the pancake mix.
Right.
So if it was in something like yeast or something of that effect, they avoided it again because they didn't have the pancake mix. The cookies, she didn't eat the chocolate chip because she wanted it to be chocolate chip, but I think she made raisins. So she didn't eat the cookies. The biscuits that the guy who played Buddy Garrity in Friday Night Lights, when he's feeding it to the mom with Parkinson's, Joel doesn't eat that either. So I don't think those things are just ignored and they're just put in there for like no reason. I think they're trying to show us how lucky Joel got to not be a part of that first outbreak, just out of pure coincidence. The daughter wanted to make pancakes and he forgot to bring, like, those little things.
But if that's it, if it's something like yeast, I mean, such a small percentage of people would not be infected. Everybody eats bread.
Yeah, I don't know. There's still going to be a lot of questions, but I do think it's worth considering that it's connected to people's food.
What impact would that have on the plot now, though? Like, at this point, it's 20 years in. Like, why does it matter where
I don't know
started?
if it matters in terms of moving the plot further along. I think it just adds more layers into
like what happened.
Yeah, because it gives the gamers some intrigue to keep tuning in, because I'm looking forward to getting some of those questions where I think the people who didn't play the games are like, I'm in it for the thrill, and I'm like all the way in it.
What type of factory was it that those workers were at? Was it grain?
Which workers?
The workers in Indonesia where they had the outbreak. It was a factory, but I can't remember what type. I want to say it was grain. It was like grain or something.
Oh boy, I don't know. I think I saw.
Ellie is saved because she's gluten free.
I think I saw a video from Heavy Spoilers where he talks about like Neil Druckmann clearly pulls from like real life examples, and there was an outbreak, something similar to this, where like the food wasn't well and like hundreds of people got sick. I don't remember the country that it was in, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's where like the origin sort of pulled from. But yeah, there's a science there to the hive that I think is going to play a role in this later on, because that adds a lot more dread. You got to watch where you're walking.
Yeah, that's absolutely terrifying. And when you see how much it spreads, it's everywhere.
Yeah,
there's no way to really avoid that.
But it seems as though if you kill the infected or clickers in the area,
it like
the hive kind
up
of
or
dries
something.
out. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm sure we'll get more answers there, but that I thought was very fascinating.
What was the deal? So when they went in the museum and she saw that guy that had been attacked by the clicker, and she was like, what did that? Because I've been attacked and it doesn't look like that. What do the clickers do that's different?
There are obviously various degrees of what an infected can look like. And as time goes on, the more severe the side effects get. So it sounds as though in the TV show, whatever Ellie was exposed to when she was bit were infected that were fairly new. Her reaction to those clickers, to me, came across as she had never been exposed to a person that far gone. So when it comes to the difference between a clicker and an infected, yes, they're blind, they can't see, but everything else gets heightened. So I think what they were trying to imply was clickers are harder to kill and they are more violent in the way that they kill.
Okay.
Which feels like if you were trying to find a way to make it feel like the video game, they did it, because dumb things are hard to kill. Very hard to kill. Oh my gosh. It gets easier when you have like a shotgun and you can just shoot them right in the head, which that's just like a basic zombie rule. In the head, they die easily. Or like burn them alive. You can make like a Molotov. But if you just got like regular weapons, even with just like a gun, Joel had like it looked like an automatic, and it was not easy to take that thing down. So I got the feeling that that's what they were trying to show.
Okay, they're more violent. They're harder to kill.
And they definitely seem
And that's
stronger.
not like the last level of clicker.
That's far from the last level of clickers.
I've seen.
So if
it was on the trailer too. They showed like a really.
If people are afraid of clickers, I've got news for you. You ain't seen nothing.
I don't like that sound that they make. That is not. I would love to be an extra. I would love to play a zombie in one of these shows. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, when people doing The Walking Dead, they say that it's a blast.
Yeah,
you're putting on the makeup and all that.
I just feel like that'd be so fun. I want to know how. Where do I need to be? That's another question I have. I really want to know about the set building for this show, because it's very good. I'm sure some of it has to be like fake. Like they don't have the Boston skyline in ruins, but it looks very good. But like the buildings, and also I'm sure some of those places are real. Like when they went to the museum, somebody from Boston, I would love to know, is the Bostonian Museum a real place, and is that what it looks like? Because that would be terrifying if they'd paid that close attention. Like, imagine we're watching something that's based in like Rochester or like Minneapolis or DC, but it's in this setting, and we're seeing like familiar places and like buildings in a room. Like I just feel like that would be very good attention to detail on their part if that is like
I think
a real
there
place.
is, because in the second game there's parts of Seattle, Washington that you're in, and I've seen people like take pictures and say like, oh, this is where they were inspired when they made this scene in The Last of Us. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know how accurate that is in the first game. It could be. I will say they are doing a very good job in not just using like the same dialogue from the video game, but like the set looks the same. When we first walked into that museum and the building collapses behind them,
That happens.
identical. When I was actually kind of blown away of like, whoa, it looks exactly like it. The color, where things are placed, I thought that was very impressive on their end.
It's like they know all the right things to keep the same, and then they know all the right things to change or add
Yeah.
to make it just different enough so that it's still interesting.
Right.
But like familiar enough so that you can be like, oh, like I know this. I've been there. Even in that scene with the clicker, I could envision in my head, like when they were hiding and stuff, I could envision in my head, like in the game, like when you have to press the button to like make them crouch down, and when you can do that thing where they turn white. I don't know what you're doing when the character like turns white.
I think you're holding down R2.
So that I don't know why you do it, so that you could see like where they.
Yeah,
Like
so
where the thing is?
It's not a very realistic thing.
No, I know, but
you
like
can like see the shadows of like the people.
But I could envision the gameplay for that particular
Yeah.
scene like very clearly.
Or even something as simple as like when Joel like moved that bookshelf out of the way. Like there are
Like,
things
you
that you would
have
have
to
to
do
do. Like
that,
you're like
yeah.
spamming triangle to like
move.
move out. All of that stuff feels. Or like when he lifts Tess up to get over so that she can go around. All that stuff's in the game.
That's very funny.
Yeah. So I'm impressed with that.
I really like Ellie. I feel like this actress is doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Of just being like the brattiest teenager that you can imagine, but that she still sort of love.
Again, I mean, we've said this before, and I know other people have said this. We gotta trust that HBO knows what they're doing, y'all. You can't watch that and be like, "That's not Ellie." You're insane. That she embodies Ellie perfectly, and it does kind of feel like sometimes people are like, they care more about like the fan casting or like someone that looks exactly like a character versus will this professional who is an actor be able to bring this character to life, even if they don't look identically like the person.
She definitely has the essence of the character down,
Yeah.
I would say. I also really love that they're showing like this. It feels very similar to the dynamic that like older generations have with like Gen Z, Gen Alpha. Like there's clearly a generational divide in the show of like, you were born after the outbreak, you have no knowledge of the world before this, and so this is how you operate, taking things a little less seriously because it's just the norm for you. You're very, versus like people who were there when it all happened and they remember the world before and they're now living in this new normal, but for her it's like this just is normal. So she's like a little bit more reckless. She is scared because sometimes she she'll kind of slip up and you could tell she's scared, but sometimes it's like not always as scared as you think she should be. Like frankly, this entire journey for me I mean, frightening. There'd
like
be
glued at the hip of Joel.
yeah, there'd be no joke. Sometimes she starts walking off. Like I know she's not leaving them, but she starts like wandering and exploring, and I'm like, where are you? Where are you going?
You have no weapons. It's like, yeah, Ellie. I think part of it is a little bit of arrogance. Like, I mean, she gets bit and like nothing happens, but like they don't just bite and leave you alone.
Like what Tess said, you're not immune to being ripped apart.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So she's a 14-year-old kid. What more can you expect? But yeah.
When she went to the little counter at the hotel.
That's such an Ellie thing to do. I'm sorry. Like,
when Joel was like, "You're a weird kid," I was like, "No, she's not." I was like, "That's a very normal kid."
That's a very teenager thing to do, bro. Like, they did do some interesting changes. So not just with the hive mind and the spores change, with spores not existing. And it makes sense. You don't need spores in there because if it's airborne, how realistic is it for it to just stay dormant in one area and not spread to other people? I get why they make that change.
Yeah.
I am interested into why they didn't add that final scene with it being Fedra.
What did they replace Fedra with in the
So
show?
Fedra is the one that came out and wiped out the Fireflies in that scene. But it seemed as though in this one, it's just infected that played a role in that, which I understand. It seemed as though episode 1 really served as a way to world build in terms of this is what structures and systems look like in the world after the outbreak. And now this is we're outside of that system, and this is like the Wild West. Right. And so if that's the case, you don't need Fedra to really get your point across. And I didn't mind it, but I would be curious to see like how the video gamers feel about that change, because when I'm watching, I'm still feeling a sense of dread, even though like I knew that this is going to be where like Tess goes out. Although I was not expecting that kiss, and that made me extremely uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable. And I know it has to matter because it's such a bizarre thing to include.
Yeah.
There has to be a reason.
They don't strike me as directors that are like, we're just going to put that in there to just make people, queasy.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it has to matter. And there was like a look in her eye too, as it was. I mean, maybe it was just like a WTF moment like that. But it kind of, I don't know. It was weird the way that the way that he approached her, and he's the only one that approached her. All the others just weird? Walked by. I'm like, did he know her? Like, did he know her? Was she? But she wasn't from Boston. She was from Detroit.
But why didn't any of the other infected stop?
I don't know.
It's also very weird that when someone dies or like I guess completes the infected process, those fungi cordyceps grip their hands into them. Did you notice that when they were on the ground, the roots started to like cover up in the bit? That was also very weird. It very much feels like this thing is alive, and it's giving off Vecna vibes in like
yes, okay,
things.
That's what it was reminding me of.
Yeah.
I was trying to think. That is exactly what it is like. I'm very scared about the Raiders. I know that they're gonna come, and I don't like that. It just feels like another thing to be concerned about. I don't like that at all.
There are moments where people will scare you more.
Yeah, well, because you have to do that in a zombie show. That's always like the thing is like the real. They're always like threat. The real threat is you. Like in The Walking Dead, like after. I mean, I obviously stopped after they killed Glenn, which was the correct thing to do. And if you did that, you are on the right side of history.
I stayed strong. I stayed loyal.
But in The Walking Dead, after a few seasons, it was like you weren't really worried about the zombies anymore. It was like, okay, whatever. They'll come across some zombies. Like they'll do what they have to do. Like when there was like a lot of them, you'd be like, okay, more concerned now.
Yeah.
But like when they would just come across a few at a time, it was like, okay, they're gonna shoot them. Someone's gonna have an axe. Like we'll be fine. That like wasn't really the concern. It was more like an inconvenience. And the big threats that they focused on were like the people that they would come across, which were always bad. They never came. I feel like they maybe came across a few good people, but it was like
Alexandria. Those
yeah. But I feel like as the show went on, it was like they're the only good people left in this world. Apparently, everybody else has what's the word I'm trying to? I can't remember the word.
Conformed.
But yeah, basically like succumbed. That's what I should say. Oh. Everybody else has succumbed to
the darkness of this new post-apocalyptic world. You brought up The Walking Dead, and it's going to be very hard to not make those comparisons. Because I've already started to see some people say, oh man, The Last of Us has already passed The Walking Dead. Listen,
I would say
I am the biggest Last of Us fan, and this first season might go down like better than The Walking Dead, but we can't act like those first, I would say the first 2 to 4 seasons around those areas. I was going to say the third one, but then season 4 was also very good. Those are peak zombie television. I think the problem is longevity is always the weakness to a zombie television show, because it's either you introduce
a cure.
You got to introduce a cure, or the conclusion has to come from something. Mm-hmm. And when we sort of find out in The Walking Dead that they're all infected, you kind of dig yourself in a hole there in terms of where the story goes. Right. Because now you're just creating a cycle of, we have to create a new villain. It can't be the walkers anymore, because after about 3 seasons, we've learned all of the world building about zombies. Once that's completed, the only thing you can keep doing is making people the villains. Versus with The Last of Us, they started off with letting you know that there's someone who's immune. And so the stakes are already going to feel higher, because you know it's not going to go on for 11 seasons. And because you know that, all bets are off for everyone. No one is really safe. That's why I sort of appreciated with Game of Thrones when it first came out. After Ned Stark, I was like, oh no.
Anybody could go at any time.
No one's safe. Anyone can go. But with the Walking Dead, I knew certain people were safe. And then, when you start making spin-offs, right? Maggie and Negan, or then like Daryl has his own. If they find themselves in a predicament, I know they're going to survive because they have a spin-off. So little things like that were just starting to bug me. But
yeah, I feel like I already like The Last of Us more than Walking Dead, but I am very biased because I feel very negatively about that show now. After what they did. Yes, with Glenn. I just thought that was just not good. I thought that was just very poor decision making. I think that you have to know, like, okay, sometimes you have to kill a popular character because you have to, like, make people hurt. But I just think you have to know when that is the right decision for your show. I just think that was a really good example of it being the absolute wrong decision for the show. Yeah. It was not the way to go. I feel like Stranger Things does this well. They introduce a character that they know will be beloved, that everybody will fall in love with and will be a fan favorite, but it is like a sacrificial lamb. Like every season they do that. They give you like a sacrificial lamb character that you're going to be like, wow, this person is great. They're such a great character. And then at the end, they're going to die.
But doesn't that get a little expendable, redundant to some degree?
Well, yeah. And so, but I feel like now that they're nearing the end, now I feel like next season, we know I'm going in predicting that one of the kids is going to die or one of the teenagers is going to die. Mm. But you don't do that till you're finishing off, till you're nearly done, till things are coming to a close. I feel like, at least not your core characters. You can have like side characters that are popular that you choose to do that. But I felt like Glenn was like a main character. He was like a big reason of why people tuned into that show.
But what do you feel like is the difference with Glenn dying in The Walking Dead versus Robb Stark dying in Game of Thrones? I see.
Maybe it made more narrative sense.
I think the problem was it was too violent in how they.
Well, yeah, that was all. It was also excruciating.
You know what I mean? Robb took a lot of arrows, and then Bruce Bolton comes up and says like the last send them regards. You see his arm go up and stab Robb in the stomach. But, like, he's not, like, butchered in front of you. And in the next episode, they, like, stick his direwolf's head on Robb's body. And then they, like, chant, "Here comes the King of the North," as they're walking out of the twins' castle. But you don't actually see them behead Robb and then put the direwolf. Like, you don't. But with that one, you're watching Negan just kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah, very unsettling.
And what also made it, the timing was also bad too, because they started that process at the end of the last season. He kills him at the end of the season before.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of knew. There was some speculation, but people were pretty sure it was Glenn because Glenn died in the comics.
Right.
So then you kind of sit in the dread for like a year, at least several months. And then you come back and it's like, you're putting us back in it to watch it happen, but we already knew. Like, you already told us. You didn't have to rehash it. You could have come back and just been like, funeral for Glenn, like, he has passed. You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't have to put us back in the moment and show it happen.
I don't mind them bringing us back. I just think it was too drawn out.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to do that, maybe in the first few minutes, but that Negan beaten with the bat scene, that went on for like the first half of the episode, which was...
It wasn't long. I remember we were in your apartment. It was like so silent. There was like 15 people there.
Yeah.
There was no sound.
I don't think I have any other final thoughts. I am most intrigued by the world building that they're doing in the show so far. That always fascinates me more when it comes to zombie shows. So I appreciate them adding that in there. It's giving me something to look forward to. Any final thoughts for you?
I think I'm most excited to see the budding friendship between Joel and Ellie. I think that's gonna be so good.
What makes me very excited is critics were given access to the entire first season. And so when you look at that Rotten Tomato score and it says 99%.
That's the whole season.
Right.
Okay.
Versus like, I mean, listen, man, I got love for the MCU, but they do be on that thing where like they'll release like 1 or 2 episodes. And so that Rotten Tomato score only reflects a very limited amount of episodes that they've seen. And then when like you get to like the last 3, it's like,
that last leg of the season is always a little rough.
That third act is rough for them. It can be rough sometimes. I love them. Listen, we're die hard. We watch all the movies. We've already got our Ant-Man tickets bought. Like, we're going and all, but sometimes it can be rough. So that gets me a little bit more relieved, is that it's going to be a banger through and through, which sometimes you can just tell after like the first couple of episodes. It doesn't seem like they're going to miss.
I don't think they will, but also it's HBO. And with HBO, they really don't miss. Like, it doesn't, I can't really think of an example of where they have really.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. Once again, we are not pros on this. This is us just talking as a couple. So please do not take this and think that we're somehow... You said what?
I'm a pro.
Well, there's one pro here, but it's not me. So would love to hear what some of the things that you all think about this episode and the season so far. But with that, thank you all again, and we'll see you next time.